Hello everybody, welcome again to the shop. Got another project on the operating table today. It's for the downhill Dodge. And if you guys are anything like me, you enjoy engines that make a lot of noise when you're young, but as you get a little bit older and you have to listen to the thing every day, it gets a little old after a while. So I love the stacks that I made for my Dodge. I have a video of how I made them if you look back in my videos, but they're not too loud, but especially in the summer with the windows down, they just make too much noise, especially on long trips. So I'm making some stack insert mufflers, and I think they should work pretty well. So to make them, I have two sections of 4-inch diameter pipe, and my stacks are 5 inches in diameter. They're, I don't know, 24-ish inches long. This is the only length of 4-inch I had. I cut it in half to get the most length I could. And then out of this piece of sheet metal, which is roughly the same thickness as the exhaust tubing, I am going to cut some donuts out of it. These are 5-inch circles here that will fit right inside the ID of my 5-inch stacks. And then I'm going to use a brand new 4-inch hole saw to cut a 4-inch diameter hole in the middle. Basically make a big washer. That washer is going to slide over each end, the end up here and the end down there, and that washer will create a seal, if you will, around that 5-inch stack. And then I'm going to either cut a bunch of holes or slits or something in this tubing. Here's a piece of 5-inch pipe around the 4-inch, and the concept is that as exhaust flows up through the 4-inch insert, the space between the 4-inch and the 5-inch pipe will act as kind of a muffler or a glass pack or resonator or whatever you want to call it. Even though it's not actually going to be packed with anything, it's just going to be a volume. And that little cushion of air hopefully should muffle it down a bit. So I started just by tracing the inside of the tube of the 5-inch exhaust tube. Then I measured it with calipers, and then I cut that dimension in half to find center. And then just using the calipers from 3 different points, I made one scribe mark, another scribe mark, and a final scribe mark in order to find center, and then I center punched it. So that center punch is what I'm going to use to center my hole saw. So the 4-inch hole is going to be right in the middle of the 5-inch washer I'm making. So I got these all cut out with the 4-inch hole saw. Wasn't as bad as I thought. And as a side note, these holes that you cut out, deburr them and throw them in your washer drawer. These, I mean, you never know if you're going to need a washer like this, and you can always drill out that center hole bigger if you need to. So now the next step is to cut the outside. Unfortunately, of course, I can't use a hole saw for that because there's no center. And even so, I want a more precise fit. So I'm going to use an angle grinder. I'm just going to cut and cut and cut and cut progressively like that, and then finish it off on the bench grinder. But you got to make sure not to overheat this when you're cutting it, because it'll discolor the paint and the Sharpie marker, and then you're not going to know where your mark is. Here they are roughed out. You can see how I just chugged along and got it rough cut. So here the rings are. They're all sized up and ready to go. I used a flap disc on my angle grinder to clean all the paint off. Here's the 2 4-inch pipes. I ground the metal nice and clean. These pipes are aluminized, so to make a nice easy weld you want to grind that aluminum off, just expose the bare steel. Now that the spacers are welded onto the ends of the 4-inch pipe, I have laid out spots all across the pipe to make my baffle holes. I was originally thinking about just drilling holes, but I found a very similar build to this online on some diesel forum, and what the guy did, he made T-shaped slits like this and bashed in the corners of the cut. His theory was that these folded in pieces would kind of catch the flow of exhaust and force the exhaust into the chamber between the 4-inch and 5-inch pipe and help muffle it more. Okay, so I got all these cut. Now I'm just going to use a punch and punch these in. Now that these inserts are all perforated and ready to go, the last thing I'm going to need to do is install some sort of a locking mechanism, so once I put this in, it's not going to slide down too far or out or wherever. So the simplest thing that I came up with, got a bunch of nuts and bolts. I'm going to weld the nut on the very edge like this, and then I'll drop it in, then I can turn the bolt in, and the bolt will eventually come through the nut and push against the side of the stack. And I'll have 3 on the top of each one of these inserts, and I think that'll be plenty sufficient to hold it in place. Okay, so I got the nuts welded on, and I'm just running a tap through these nuts, chase the threads a little bit, get the bits of spatter and oxidation out of there so the bolts will slide in nicely. And then next step is to install them into my truck. And here they are, installed into my stacks. As you can see, I've been using them a little bit. I had to take it for a test drive, of course, to see how it works. And it actually works pretty good. I'm very happy with them. I like to do a video showing you what they sound like, but it's really hard to capture an accurate sound out of this truck with either this camera or my other one. So I'll just have to explain to you that it still sounds loud, like it used to, but under heavy load and at high RPMs, there was just a certain sharp snarl that the exhaust had that's common to pretty much anything that's straight piped, gas or diesel. And these mufflers smoothed that out. They still talk, they still have some vocal cords, but it just makes it a little bit more pleasant to listen to if your windows are down, which will be excellent for the summer, because I really like to have that back window open and a side window in the summer. It gets a nice breeze going through the cab. So that's it, everybody. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps you guys out. Maybe you can make your own stack insert mufflers. They worked pretty well for me, and it took a couple hours to make, I think, but they turned out pretty well, and I would suggest it to anybody else wanting to do the same thing. So thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure to hit the like button or subscribe button if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more.